here, and we have with us today Dr. Priyadarsh Ture, who is originally from Chandrapur district of Maharashtra. He completed his MBBS from the Government Medical College Meerut in Maharashtra in 2009, and subsequently worked as medical officer in the tribal area of Melghat for about 6 years. And during his stay, he has been part of multiple activities, but also things. So we will be talking about that as we go along. He for malnutrition in this area. He has also worked at Orissa, and currently, after completing his MD in community medicine, he works at the He currently works at the Shahid Hospital, extensively involved with a lot of disaster relief works across wherever there were floods in last few years. Priyadarsh was there. So we will know about this exciting and adventurous journey of this young, dynamic doctor in our weekly program, Doctors with a Difference. I welcome all my viewers who have joined both on Zoom as well as on YouTube along with us. And I welcome Priyadarsh for today's session.
Hello all.
It's really nice that somebody who is a very young and dynamic person is joining us today. We are very excited to understand your thought process, Priyadarsh. Typically when you go in a medical college, everybody wants you to go back and start your own clinic or a hospital and settle down. Why did you choose to go to a tribal place soon after your MBBS? What was the motivation behind that?
Yes. Thank you for joining me, and hello to everybody. Yes. Thanks, Par, for giving that brief introduction. And answering the question, I think this all was like part of my upbringing, where I had a middle class family, and then used to didn't had much friends, but used to engross myself in books, specifically story books, adventure books, and all those things. My uncle was a school teacher, so he used to have many books in his cupboard, and then daily we used to live in a joint family. So daily, because no friends were there, and I didn't have much people who can play with me. So most of my holidays used to go with the books, and reading all those books always make me feel that okay, one king, one queen is there, then some demon will come, and then they will try to overtake the queen or trouble the other people. The king will go and win the battle and come back, and all the people will be happy. So that notion that good people should be there, they can always conquer the negativity, and then you should put efforts in making the place more good, which is the place around you, however that place may be. That got installed in me since the childhood, that one should be good, one should help others. And uh, and also the notion that the books which I wrote, like world famous treasures, world famous unsolved mysteries, they used to always challenge me that okay, there are some mysteries which are still unsolved, so I can go and actually solve them, or I can make the place better, or I can use that money for good of the people. So that to be unique, or to try to be unique, was always a thing which always fascinated me, that okay, kuch hatke karte hai, let's do something different. But what different I didn't knew. I used to hate mathematics because I never understood those things. So the only option left behind me was left for me was like mm, getting admission in medical college. And so I studied, and I think I studied only for like 2 years in 11th and 12th. And before that, I used to just get pass any means not much bothered about the studies. But then one fine day, I got a book written by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, which is on Buddha, Buddha and his Dhamma, the name of the book. So I read it, and then I felt that okay, there is much more to the life which I was living, which was just like doing fun, enjoyment, not having much questions about what life is, why this pain and suffering are there, why these problems are originating, or what are the root cause of this thing. And then moreover than that, how one can change one's behavior, one's attitude towards life, towards self, and by practice what one can achieve. Because as Buddha always says that there were Buddhas before him, there will be Buddhas after him, and anyone can become Buddha. It only is a matter of practice. If you practice that all the things perfectly, then you become a Buddha. As Buddha is a stage, it's not a name. Siddhartha Gautama reached Buddhahood, we can say. So that notion really shook me, and I started thinking about okay, what my life is, what should be the aim of it. Should I just live and then die, or then should I think something more of it? What I can do. So I didn't had many answers to that. I was like in 11th or 12th, maybe 16 or 17 years at that age. But then I decided in 11th standard that okay, I will be pursuing my medical college, and then I started studying in 11th standard. In 2 years study, I scored enough marks to get admission in medical college. And in medical college also there were like many debates, and then college life and enjoyment, all there were there. But that inner search was not completed. I was not happy in my college life because I used to try various things, like do some blood donation camp or do plantation or other thing, but it was not making me happy. Just studying there was not my type of thing. I was restless, so I tried many things but failed every time. My life more is up to now is failure. Only some times I succeeded, and those were big moments. So in medical college I didn't did anything, but in third year I think one student from other medical college like BJ Medical College Pune, she came to us and she said there is a place called Melghat, which is a tribal place, and there is a lot of malnutrition and child deaths, maternal mortality there. And then Maitri Pune NGO is organizing Dhadak Mohim, a camp, sort of volunteering camp for 3 months in rainy season. And you can one can go there, work as a volunteer, and try reduce this child deaths, maternal deaths, can reduce malnutrition. So I was waiting for such opportunity, because before that I remember that I was in second year of my medical school, and then tsunami came, and I enrolled in at many places, but nobody took me seriously, and they said you are just a college going student, like still in medical college, so we will not take you along. So everybody rejected me. But in third year this opportunity came, and I just stick to it, and then went to Melghat and worked there. So it was a very I think life changing experience, because it opened many doors to me, many doors of opportunities. Second, it helped me understand myself, because in a tribal village with no ranges there, no network, you are just yourself. You are in charge of one village, see and looking after the health of all the male, female, children, aged, pregnant, everybody. You are looking after them, and you have to be really good in communication, because their language is Kurku, you are Hindi, and they understand little bit Hindi. So, but I felt more like home there. I never felt like I am from outside and I don't understand these people and their culture. But I felt that okay, it is a very good place. I can work there and also enjoy. I can plan. I can teach children something. I can help uh, them learn a new agricultural skill. I can train the adults and girls to be to take care of the sick people. So these qualities which I was not knowing among that they are within me, or my communication was really good with them. So I was not knowing these all qualities. But when the situation presented, and then I started to expressing him, I thought that okay, this is the place. Not exactly that, but such scenarios or such places, I will be love to work there. And then I thought, okay, yes, I can work there. pretty nicely. Then I came back to my college, and again college life final year, and I finished it. And again I ran back to Melghat after finishing my final year exam. And there was some project where the US students came to Melghat, and they were trying to install solar power plants and electricity material there, so that the lights should be there in the remotest village. So I went there just as a translator, and then I helped them, and then again I felt like, okay, this is a good place to be there. So that was, I think, the changing moment, because there I meet around 25 people from all over Maharashtra who also came for volunteering. The group become big. Through them I got various contacts to other people. I got to know about Nirman. I got to know about Sevankur, and I met various role models like Dr. Abhay Bang, Savji sir, Kolhe sir, Satav sir, and many more people I met. Many like-minded friends I got, which was really a biggest what you say asset right now I'm having. That there are so many people who I know who are dedicated to their work, who want to do something for the society. And then in my college, I used to feel very lonely, because in batch of 100, I am just one single person who is thinking differently. But when you come in contact with these people in such camps, you know that there are many more, hundred thousands of people who are thinking like that. You also meet your senior peoples who have already thought like that and actually did something, and then they will share their experiences, their failures, their success with you. And then you understand that, okay, wow, uh, this thing I want to do. From them I want to learn something, and then I also want to tell my experiences to them. So I got such platform and such friends in Melghat, Dhadak Mohim, Sevankur, also in Nirman and other camps. And then then I started studying for my PG in internship. But somewhere around August, Bihar floods came. There is Kosi floods, which was very dangerous at that time, because suddenly within a night the river Kosi changed, and it ran into 10 districts which were never saw Kosi, and it was flooding the plains, and many big scale migration occurred due to that. So I was in internship, but I ran away from my college because I got an opportunity to be there, and a group of doctor was going from Mumbai, and I joined them. And then I didn't inform my teachers because I thought they will say no, and I ran away with them and went to Bihar. But unfortunately, due to an accident, a lightning occurred in a camp. One of our doctor who was working with us, who went with us from Mumbai, he died. So the Maharashtra government called all the doctors back, because they went officially, but I was an unofficial entry to that. So I said that I will not go, and I came here for work, and I will keep continuing my work. So I called my parents, and they said, okay, if situation is okay and needed you, just stay there. So they always supported me. Biggest thing, because I don't have to struggle to ask them, or they say no. They always supported me in any of all my adventures. Till now, they're supporting me. So they said, you stay, and I worked there, and that was a second turning point of my life, because there I was alone. Then at that time, Raj Thackeray and MNS and many things in Maharashtra was going on, and effigies of Biharis were burned in Maharashtra. Effigies of Raj Thackeray were burning in Bihar. And at that time, I was alone. My whole team went back to Bombay, and then they just said that if you are coming with us, okay. If you are coming with us, you are on your own. We don't owe any responsibility for you, because the most junior, most within them. So I said, stay, and then made my own time. And I stayed there for 2-3 months. Then many more national international NGOs who are working in the field of disaster. And I led many teams and reached many areas which were not reached before. Worked with our border security forces, ITPB, and all. And that was that thing caused increase in my confidence that I can work alone and on my own, because I was just an intern then. But still, I was the only doctor in 1 or 2 districts, and I was roaming all the district and helping them get medicines, and then training and teaching many more volunteers, coordinating with national international NGOs. And I was just maybe around 22, 23 at that time. So that movement built a lot of confidence in me. And then after that, my whole dream got crashed, because then I, okay, if I can sustain and work for the health of many people when I'm just an intern, then why I'm running behind PG? What exactly the PG is going to help me? So I thought that I don't have answers for why I should get the PG. So I said, okay, let's go to Melghat again and work as a medical officer there. So after completion of my uh, uh, MBBS and internship, I applied for the post in Melghat. I asked them that give me the most remote PHC, and fortunately, the PHC I got was the same where I worked in third year in Dhadak Mohim. So I was in charge of those villages, 42 villages, and PHC platform, and then I worked there for maybe 6 years, in and out. I used to went for some training, and then again I used to come back and work. So I just went there to work for 1 year. My bond was for only for 1 year, but I don't know how 6 years passed, and then I never felt that okay, I should leave this place. And it was a very good experience, learning a lot from people, learning humbleness, learning how to handle village, the mob psychology, group psychology, how to motivate them, and we did lot of different parts, not only related to health, but other thing. And people used to say that tribal people don't listen, they will not come to hospital, and they will do other superstitious activity. But in my PHC, because my tone was never like harsh for them, I used to always welcome them, talk to them, make fun and humor with them. So they used to always like me, and they used to come to my place to PHC. And then I never faced this problem that people are not coming. I used to convince them, and they used to come. And when after 1 or 2 years, they used to know that okay, this person is there and they will get good treatment here, so they used to definitely come there. So I didn't feel there was a problem of communication. And I used to also teach people there, teach student there. So few of the student then
I think
unfortunately there are not much teachers there. So then
multiple experiences, one after another. But I am sure there are a lot of things that resonate with a lot of viewers who are medicos. One, I think all of us kind of hate mathematics, and therefore we are there. Second, I think there is a lot of learning that we have during medical college, but then people who want to think differently, not go with the flow and just do their courses, they find themselves in similar situation that you were in. You know, you were feeling that loneliness, and you require that kind of support system and want to see others who are in similar areas. And therefore, I'm very sure, you know, listening to you on such platforms, there would be many more who want to do something for the society, but are unable to find what to do. And they feel lonely, and probably this platform would help them to ensure that, you know, they have some more people uh, who are crazy like themselves.
yes, true. We need a lot of crazy
So
people because we always feel separate without isolated. I think very loneliness is the biggest problem in this sector. We're always a minority. Yes, yes. So
yeah, I think
yeah,
another
so
thing that you were talking about was the contribution of you are today. And the second thing that you spoke about was different camps. You just named a few camps, but some of the viewers may not really know what they are. So if you can elaborate on these and also find like-minded people.
yeah. Uh, there are in Maharashtra. Fortunately, there are so many mentors uh, who not only do work which are socially relevant, but also make sure that this legacy passed down to the youngsters. So like mm, Dr. Avinash Savji is there, who will who motivates the student and make them sensitized through Sevankur. Dr. Abhay Bang, Rani Bang, and then many other people are there who are involved in Nirman. So in this camp, they will definitely they will make announcement for this camp. They will choose students, filter them, and then they will have a theme-based camp where people from different area, like some doctors, some engineers, or mixed population want to go there. The mentors will come, tell their stories. This the people can talk with them, ask them some questions, and then they can know their journey, and from them they can have their own answers, because everybody is searching there. Everybody tries to get some or the other insight from each other. The mentor also learns something from the students. The student also are always searching from the mentors the answer for their existence, the answer that how they can be more productive for the society. And this camps helps us a lot. Like they they are a place, I think they are like what do you say, कारखाना, कारखाना को क्या बोलेंगे
Factory.
इंग्लिश में?
Factory.
Factory, yeah. They are factory young budding social entrepreneurs, so who are looking forward for answers, and then is so much energy there, and you always feel good reconnecting with them. But more importantly, as now I cross that age, and now i I am actually working, and I can see my friends also working. That is also place where you get mm, your what you say, crisis management group. Like when you're in a crisis, when you have so much questions, when you feel alone, you can always go back to this group. There are people from different sectors. They can help you, they can answer you. uh, and emotional support is the biggest one. Mentoring also, good mentors will you will get there, and you can just stick with them and then tell your daily activities, and then they will help you. They'll try reshaping you, your attitude, your thought process. So those things are really very good in Maharashtra. I mean, we are trying to replicate those things in now in Chhattisgarh and Odisha. So we'll be starting those things soon, because now what I learned from my mentors, I want to give those platform to the states where they don't have such platforms. So it'll be like in November or December, we'll starting in Chhattisgarh and Odisha.
That is wonderful to know, and I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this probably would connect with you, who would like to work for the society, who gives them the kind of status and the resources that we have. Uh, you spoke about something called as Dhadak Mohim. What is that concept, and what was it? What was the involvement that somebody who is involved in that process, what they had to do, and what were the kind of challenges or fun that you have had when you were working in that remote area of Melghat and coordinating all these activities?
Yeah, there are two phases. Like in the Dhadak Mahim, it was like in the rainy season of July to September. July to September, there are more than 80% of the child deaths and maternal deaths are used to occur in those 3 months. So their concept for this, if these 3 months we can ensure that no death occur, we can reduce the child death to a huge extent. And these are the time duration when there is more sickness or illness, like diarrhea will be more, pneumonia will be more, because of the dehydration will be more, because of that malnutrition will be more. So we used to work on this multi-prong approach, like, and not fancy medicines, just give ORS for the diarrhea, just maintain their good nutrition. For pneumonia, there are 2-3 drugs, and then some paracetamol for fever and other thing. So with this very my small quantity of medicines, we used to treat many patients, and then we used to see that no child die during that 3 months period. So this was a concept, and then there used to be batches of 10 days. So like my first batch will be first. So after 9th day, the second batch will come. We'll hand over them the villages to those batches. We'll tell them what exactly to look for, where exactly are the patients and all that, and we'll go. And then next third batch will come on after again 9 days, like that. So all these 3 months, 10 batches used to come, and after 9 days interval, and each of us used to have 2 or 3 base camps which are attached to around 5 or 6 villages. So daily we used to go to those villages, look for all the patients, look for all the children in Anganwadi, the ANC patient, and then evening again have a second round. Also talk with the villagers about hygiene, environmental issues, safety, spacing, birth control, education. Tell them all these things, and then come back evening, brief, give a brief of all what is happening, and then like that the schedule of Dhadakam used to be. And then if any serious patient is there, we used to refer the patient to the other nearby hospitals, PHC, because those were very remote locations, so that availability of doctors and nurses used not be there, and then that's why this support system was needed.
I think this was one question, as a couple of your mentors have already come to these programs. We are doing it weekly. Who really want to go to the community and serve them had this particular question. There is always this assumption where, you know, it is difficult to deal with tribal people. They probably do not understand your language. There are a lot of communication issues and all of that. So how do you deal with all that when you are actually in the field?
Yes. Yes, there are two, three things. Philosophically, we can say that okay, the language is universal. If you have compassion for someone and you have empathy with them, they will understand. They will also welcome you. They will not get threatened by your presence. And the second thing was that there were volunteers who my three people trained in this last 20, 30 years. So they used to accompany with us. So any problem with them, so they used to help us in translation, because the old people were not so good with Hindi. The third one were the students who are like studying in 8th, 9th, 10th, who are in the village only. So they are studying in Hindi medium or Marathi medium. So they used to know that language. So whenever we used to go, we used to take them with us, and they used to help us in translation. And fourth is Asha and Anganwadi worker. They are also care providers. So they used to help us in this thing, like convincing someone, translating, giving us numbers of important people, help agencies. So in this way, we used to help. But I think the language is not much a barrier, because some or the other person will be there who want to help you genuinely, and then they will just come and help you.
Wonderful to know. I mean, the language of compassion is probably the universal language that is a message that we get from Priyadarsh today. Another thing probably which you have a real good experience in the field is disaster management. Uh, from your profile, what we understand is that you have worked, and you were just mentioning that floods in Bihar, you were there during your internship. There were floods in Kedarnath as well as Kerala, where you have volunteered to be there and, you know, to help people around. So what was it that made you go there, number one? Number two is, when you go there and when you see a situation of that kind of a disaster, uh, what is it that as a medico that you have to do, and as a human being that you need to do? So both things are going to be important, because I am sure it's not only enough to be a medico in that kind of a situation.
Yes, true. But there, working in disaster, actually, I like working in disaster, because I think I work more in emergency situations. My productivity increases a lot. But second thing is what actually shown in the TVs about disasters, like there is flooding, there will be flooded water, earthquake, destruction. Actually, those scenes are very, very less. You always get people where, because in the initial time, all the rescue is done by the army. You don't get a chance while the rescue is going on. Even in Uttarakhand, we get only after 1 month we got a chance to actually visit those villages, and then after all the rescue operation was done by the NDRF and the army people. So so what exactly happens is you go like a medico, but as you say that in my first disaster I was just serving as a medico, and we started a school for the students who are not going to schools because all the schools are closed. So our volunteers from Delhi School of Social Works used to teach them, and then few students we trained like pharmacists. They used to dispense medicine for them, and some ANC care, somebody got some wound, so wound cleaning and infection dressing management and treating the patient, because there will be lot more uh, diarrhea and pneumonia at that time, because you are getting impure water food for drinking, and then there are some hygiene problem, lot of fungal infection. So not many serious patients, but there are patients who need treatment, because then they cannot get treatment from nearby, because no hospital is now surviving there or no doctors are nearby. So in the initial first and second phase, I just did the medical services, like going to villages, then going with a bag with full of medicines, going in a boat or walking like 10 kilometer, 20 kilometer, 50 kilometer, trekking. Like in Kedarnath, I was just trekking and climbing the mountains, like going to till last boundary of India, which is just nearby to China. And then I actually celebrated my Independence Day on the last village, which was just close to China border, and I was helping them with the medicines. But that was much fancy and what you say, glamorous part. More important part is helping them get over the grief, helping them to get know information about rations, helping them find employment, helping them to know that how to cope, how to maintain health in this disaster. So the third disaster I attended is in Kerala. There we shifted the whole work. Like one team used to do all the medicine giving part, but the second team used to teach them how to clean their houses, because they were now in the process of going back to their houses, but the how all the sewage water and other water has reached entered into their home, so they don't know how to clean it. So we just help them to learn how to make chlorine solution, then how to wash all their uh, the tanks and their furniture and utensils and their flooring with those things. And then we teach them many other hygienic tips, like how to clean your own home, how to disinfect it, and then how to reuse it. So because if you didn't have done that, that would have caused a lot of more illness after once they have returned back to their home, because the floor is still having bacteria or viruses or other infectious agent which can cause the diseases. So initially it was more glamorous, like going with a bag in a boat and then traveling with the army, and then in the sea or in the river, and reaching some remote place and treating some patient for fungal infection or diarrhea and death. But then I slowly understood that okay, this is not only important. There is something beyond that, because what we do is just give medicines and go back. But then what happens if tomorrow somebody falls sick? What happens if after 3 days they go back to their home, and then they don't know that how to clean that area, and because of them somebody will die, because they don't know how to disinfect their belongings, their homes. So then we decided that okay, we are giving curative services, but at the same time we should teach them the preventive measures, so that this time and also next time for whole their life they know that what exactly need to be done in such situations, specifically disaster prone situation. And second thing is about mental health, like they will have a lot of depression, grief, anxiety, because in front of them there might be like their children had died, some mother father has died, or a lot of damage to properties. Sick people are poor people are really vulnerable, because all they had they used to, like they don't have bank balance also, and then everything will be lost. So how to console them, and also not just console them, help them find some way to get their food and some employment opportunity, other things like tarpaulin they need, and they need ration, many things, clothes, because they have to run away from their houses with whatever they have on their body. So these things are much more important than just medical things, I think. And mental health also is much more important than just medical things, because this can give rise to many more diseases afterwards, after you went back after 6 months. It might come back to with depression, anxiety, many things.
I think very important areas of disaster management is the after effects and how to manage them. And you have very effectively told us about those specific areas, talking about either prevention of the illnesses that can happen or also the mental health component, which a lot of times goes missing from the entire care. Rescuing is one thing, but rehabilitating those people is a long-term process where you really require support. And that is really nice to hear from you. One of the questions that we have on this from one of the viewers, Anandi, who is a student, is what are the barriers or difficulties that you face during working in community, whether it is in tribal areas or in disaster management, whether it is money or resources or manpower? What are the kind of barriers that you have?
Yes, it's a, in an easy way, I can say that okay, money, resources, and material are always a barrier because we never had enough money to solve all the problems of all the people in our country or in the world. Also, don't have that much manpower, dedicated manpower. But more than that, if I decide okay, I will have 1 crore rupees and then I want to transform one village and I want to empower them. So to the student who is asking the question, if I say that okay, I will give you 1 crore rupees, you have 10 years to go to one village, you choose yourself and empower them in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of morality and other things. So very few people can actually do it. So the biggest barrier comes is a perceptional and cultural barrier. And the people don't think that you are among them. You are like someone from outside. You are going to a village and you are telling them that do this, and you know that you are failing a good thing, but they will still not do. For years, they will not do. You keep on telling them, they will not do. So this is the biggest barrier, as per I think, uh, because the perception that something is mine, something is ours, and something has come from outside. This perceptional difference, cultural difference, is still high, and it's actually true. I am not saying that those people are bad and they are not listening to me. I said this will happen to me also. If somebody from America come to my home, suppose come to my society, and they will say that okay, start eating beef from today. It's not that I don't eat beef or like that, but I'm like a vegetarian, and they start saying that start eating beef and it's a good proteinous thing and you should start eating it. They will stay here for 10 years and even then also I will not eat beef. They think it is important because then I am malnourished and I need protein. But my cultural context is that okay, I am a vegetarian, so I should not kill other animals, so I'll not eat. So the difference between the perception of me and others about what is the correct thing, right thing, is the biggest barrier. So if even if you have money, if you have manpower, and if you have all the resources, if you have perceptional barrier and you cannot convince them that this is important for them, they will not change, or the you will not get the results which you intend to do. So this thing should seep in their mind that they need to change. I think some Basnet theory is there for behavioral modification. So we learn in PGs. It's not that I know many things, like just I got to know about it. It's a Basnet theory. So you can Google theories of behavioral changes or behavioral modification. How one person change his behavior. Like I will tell you that okay, from tomorrow you wake up at 6 o'clock and start studying from 6 to 8. You all will agree that it is a very good suggestion. You all will know that yes, you should wake up at 6 o'clock because in morning your brain intake capacity and receptivity is much higher and your retention will be much higher. But still, only maybe if you are 100 people listening here, only maybe one person will listen to it, or even not one person will listen to it, because that needs a high motivation, that needs a seeping of that thing inside your mind, that you actually need to change. And if you decide also that you need to change, there should be action on it. And even if there is action, you should be aware that there is no intermediate.
Priyadarsh, I think your mic is muted. Just unmute yourself.
Somebody came. Is it okay now?
Yeah, we are able to hear you.
Okay. So there is a lot of behavioral change theories which tells you that how a person actually do something or change, and there are like 4 or 5 stages of behavioral changes. Like one will just think that okay, I should change. Some will start action but then not continue the action. Some will continue the action but then in 1 week moment they will leave that thing, and some will continue again more thing, and then in them only the actual behavioral change will occur. So this behavioral change is very, very crucial, like what you are intending in them, empowering or attitudinal change, these all are behavioral changes. And then the more the difference between your perception and their perception about the world, about right and wrong, these are the biggest barriers for change. um, I think so. I think this is very
That I
tough
think,
to
yeah, I
have
think
success or results.
wonderfully said, Priyadarsh, because a lot of times we look at the barriers in an outside thing, but rather it is more of a mental barrier. And the way you're trying to put it is also very important, that it is rather going inwards and changing ourselves is going to be very important, and doing it persistently is again something that is important. There are a couple of more questions related to what you have been speaking. Number one is, today we're talking of non-communicable diseases prevailing across, whether it is the urban setup or even rural setups, we have non-communicable diseases. And change of behavior in terms of your eating, in terms of your exercise pattern, and all of that is extremely important for the patients. So, how do you allow or ask your patients to change that behavior? Also, you could concurrently talk about the behavioral change that you would expect people in the tribal region or the community when you need to be associated with them.
Yes, true. So there's a work in the community also, and then I can very sadly see that okay, now the non-communicable diseases are not only uh, related to urban setup, but now they are also in the rural setup. So it feels very bad because in rural setup they are if you read the theory of non-communicable disease, they will say that okay, sedentary lifestyle, you should be fat, you should be obese, you should be eating a lot of junk foods, and then high salt content, and then you will get this diabetes or hypertension. But in the village they are still very hard working people. They are still eating nicely grown vegetables in their own farm, but still they are getting non-communicable disease. So what exactly happened then? So we're just trying to figure out what exactly happened. It's like increase salt content or more starting of junk food, or they might be like not eating their own staple food, but rather giving what is giving in the public distribution system. Like the staple food in this place or in Melghat was kutki, kodo, savria, this thing. Now they are eating wheat, rice, which was not their staple food. Also, those are not the actual variety. Those were like, these are now hybrid foods. So I don't know, means they are whether they are really the culprit. But then this changes, we can really tell that okay, after this change came, then after 5-10 years, the NCD started peaking in the nearby villages. So, but being an allopath, I'm not trained to look how living with the nature or helping, taking help from the local herbs or Ayurveda, medicine, homeopathy, or other pathies, counseling, naturopathy, how they can come together, integrate, and help some village or villagers to decide that okay, from now they will do these changes and they will try maintain a good health of the whole village, not only one person or two person, and they will not get sick. So NCD is something which you cannot cure. So the only thing possible is like you should stop prevent it from happening. And allopathy right now don't have answer for that. We can tell lifestyle modifications, but installing those modifications in them or the collective approach, then what exactly we should do? If we are saying don't eat junk food, then what are the alternatives for those junk food? What are the healthy alternatives for those food? And many other things, the lifestyle, all those things. So these are I think multi-pronged solutions, holistic solutions, and no one pathy has the answers for it. Not one lifestyle will have answers for it. We should always have to collectively work for attaining this change. That's what I think right now.
So, what is your idea about, this holistic approach? You have worked in community, and also you subsequently have acquired your MD in community medicine as well. So both theoretically as well as practically, you are equipped to tell us, when you're talking of this holistic approach to being healthy, rather than just curative approach to diseases, preventive approach is also very important. And the actual field you have worked. So how do you put things together? How do you bring in a behavioral change? What roles will other pathies have along with, the conventional medical system, the allopathy? How do we put together all these things so that, the society can remain healthy, is something that I would like to ask you.
Yeah, it's very difficult question, I think. Yes, I'll try answer because my PG was in community medicine, and then we learned many things and the approaches to it. One is the most important approach is actually having the, like, if you start with the solutions, then we should know what exactly is the problem, and then problem not in only terms of health, how many people are getting ill and sick, but also the social dynamics, like how many are unemployed, how many are in stress, how many are which age group they are. Like, data we have to have very nicely. We also need to have data why they are sick, because in previous generation there were not so many sick people among them. And then those, if we know the answer of those why, that these are the determinants of this disease, then we have to seek what exactly are their treatment modules, and also how to prevent those things from happening. We also say that there is strong genetic predisposition for hypertension or diabetes or cancer. So then, but there is theory, like there is like genes will play a role, but also the environment will also play a role. So what we can do is, we cannot right now control the genes, but we can always control the environment. What environment? If there is healthy environment, there's fresh air, you do proper exercise for your earning your bread, or you are working somewhere, or you do regular exercise, you have a good stable mind, the society around you is stable and helpful and in harmony to each other, there are less and less stressors. So all this thing will actually help you have a productive life, and this in this way you can actually learn to be peaceful with yourself and peaceful with the community. So these are the things. But then when these are not there, then you need a lot of other approaches, preventive and curative both. And I think different pathies, uh, allopathy do talk about preventive things, but actually then the other things, in homeopathy, in Ayurveda, or in Unani, or in naturopathy, there are a lot of different things. Their whole conception is about preserving the health, and then if somebody falls sick, then going towards treating them. So the each pathy has their own what do you say, positive points, and these positive points can be used together to reach this goal. But then one has to learn all these things and then have a good plan, which right now I don't have.
I think I have a very general question now, which is important when you're working in the field, when you are in community or dealing with health problems as well. Uh, there will be ups and downs in our mindset as healthcare providers. You will find some situations which are beyond your control sometimes, and then you will start feeling low. So, what should one do when they start feeling low about themselves, or the situations are not conducive of what they want to really achieve? This, I'm sure, is not really only relevant to people who are working in the social sector or in community health, but this is a very general scenario. We see that depression is so prevalent today. We are talking of suicides across. So, how do you keep yourself motivated? What habits can be cultivated to make sure that you remain inspired and motivated and continue to do what you want to do in life?
That's very, still again a difficult question to ask, because there is not a one single answer to it, that what exactly you should do, because
Yeah, I think
it's lot of,
you
it's
could
more
answer
dependent on the,
that in your
yeah,
context. You could just answer that
yeah,
in
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah,
context, because there
yeah,
will
I'm
be ups
trying.
and downs in your life. So what do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
do in
So
that
what?
situation?
Yeah, yeah. Because I think that a lot of those things need to be like, it's more about your personality, what your personality is, and what are your, how was your upbringing, what experiences you had in your life, and then what are your coping mechanisms, and what you decided this will be my coping mechanism. So in my context, I had a very good upbringing, not in terms of that, just a stable upbringing with parents always giving me freedom to do whatever I want to do. So then I made my mistakes, then I learned from them, and then they were always supportive to me. I also am having strong, not saying I'm not religious, like, but I'm spiritual. Spiritual means I believe that okay, one should do good, not do harm to others. In that way, I'm spiritual. So though that spirituality and meditation and all those things always keep me grounded and stable, so I can just try to, in meditation also, you try to observe your thoughts, which are the thoughts you don't like, or you know that these thoughts will cause trouble to you, you just ignore them, you learn to ignore them. This is cultivation of mind. So slowly, because of the meditation, I could cultivate that mindset in which those thoughts which are troubling me, I don't want them to be with me. Whenever they come, I just ignore them. I don't put much thoughts on them. Like, there are so much WhatsApp forwards or WhatsApp memes or anything, I will just look, and I know that I want to ignore them. So those thoughts will not keep on troubling with me. But then I have to work for that cultivation of mind, so that I can focus on what I am doing. So in that way, meditation and other thing helped me a lot. They kept me stable, and reading, gardening, all those things kept me engaged in Melghat here, anywhere I went. And then I could just engage myself in some productive work, teaching students. I used to teach anywhere I go. I will come, call some few students who are in 10, 12, like that, and I will teach them. So I used to teach them, interact with them, help them for their studies. So these are my coping mechanism: meditation, then talking with my friends. There are few friends with whom I am okay and I generally talk. But more or less, it's like, if you can cultivate your mind to be always happy, so that can also happen. It's not that you will always have ups and downs. There can be a stable line, and you'll the fluctuation will be less. Now the fluctuation for youngster will be like this one, but the more you cultivate your mind, the fluctuation will be less and less and less. So happiness will be not much, but the sadness will be also not too deep or steep. And one can cultivate the mind to be stable all the time. I'm trying to reach that, where I don't get angry or the patients. Now also I get angry or some patients, or like some things are there. I might get jealous or I might feel ego. Those things are there, but I'm just trying to work on them so that I will not fall prey to those things and cultivate a good mindset where I can work stably, nicely, uh, in my sphere. So this is my the spirituality which I learned, and the efforts I am putting to cultivate my mind. I think that thing is helping me a lot, along with my friends and mentors who are always there whenever I call them and guide me or tell some of the other things, support me. So, and my parents. So those are the things I think.
I think very wonderfully spoken about it, Priyadesh, because you always require that kind of a support system, be it in community health or otherwise. There will be ups and downs because we are human beings, and life is not life without those ups and downs. When ECG is flat, we are no more living, and therefore that is part and parcel of what we have to go through. But very wonderfully said, you have to have your own support system. So uh, I think finally I would like to ask you, you know what would you like, the entire community, now you are already working in community, in the tribal health, in villages, rural health and all of that. I'm sure one of the things, although you said major barrier is always going to be the mindset of people, but I'm sure if you get additional manpower, some help in some way, it would be nice so that you can work more effortlessly and help more people. So how can people connect with you and help you in what you do, or whatever you are doing? How do they replicate in their own places? What will be your suggestion for that?
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity. I think this question is important. Like, uh, uh, I will always say that start looking for like-minded people like you. If you really want to do, like, it should not be like you want to be a social change maker or you want to be a social worker or like that. Whatever you do it as a proper, it is like it is your duty. Do it honestly, do it meticulously. Always keep the person for whom you are doing the duty in your priority list. He should be the highest priority for you, and then do the work anywhere and you will still be very happy with whatever you're doing. Let it be anything. uh, this is one thing. Keep searching for the people who are like-minded, and also start visiting the people who are doing this from few years and then they have reached some stage. So they will share a lot of wisdom with you, that what exactly happened, what they are doing, what not. Try to find such camps which provide this platform to come together, interact together, learn from the mentor, learn within yourself, get some answers. You will never get all your answers from one person or one camp, but few of the lost jigsaw puzzles in your life you will definitely give, and never lose hope. Keep on improving yourself. Keep on becoming more humble. Keep on being more observant. See, don't just look away from the pain and suffering which is just around you. And if you're like in Chennai and you have some troubled neighbors in your around you, so you don't have to go to Himalayas to find answer for pain or like searching people who need your help. They're just nearby. Pain is everywhere, suffering is everywhere. So go find them, reach them, and you just won't believe it. It will cause wonders. I think I don't know whether you believe in wonders or like that, or serendipity, like something just happened. But then for that happening also, you have to put one step ahead, one step forward, and then things will start working. So you have to believe that, okay, once you go in the field, start working with your heart, or wherever you are, just do properly whatever your duties are. I think the things start working for you. You will get like-minded friends, you will get good mentors, but then you have to seize those opportunities. Opportunity will come, definitely come, but you have to seize those opportunities. we are also like helping the students, youths like you and many other peoples to have such camps in their own state, so that they can meet more like-minded people in their own state, and they can form good group and then start working on their own, or just have those groups. So if you are also interested in such camps or activities, you can always message me, and then we'll help you link to good people around in your state with whom you can interact, and then you can form good groups there, or have such kind of activities for the youths. Like you got this platform, but many more people are there who want to do something, but they are not getting the answer that what exactly they should do, and where from where they should start, who will be supporting them, and what is the platform for all this thing. So you can create your own platform at your place, and we are there to help you in every sense possible. So these things I want to share. In Chhattisgarh, if there is anyone in Chhattisgarh, then we will be starting the camps, youth camps in Chhattisgarh soon. In Orissa also, then you can definitely contact us, and then be part of it.
Well, thank you so much, Priyadarsh. It was really nice talking to you, learning about the journey that you have had with, the health. And, during the entire journey, I think the main motive had been to satisfy yourself, being searching that happiness within, and the process of being the Buddha. I hope you will attain that state of Buddha yourself in the process of what you're doing. It's been really nice to talk to you, and I'm sure your experiences will inspire a lot of others to come and join hands to work for community and provide healthcare to a lot of people who require them. Thank you so much, Priyadarsh. Any parting thoughts before we conclude today?
Uh, yeah, I think this is a very wonderful opportunity which is started by the people, and this initiatives like this are needed more, so that uh, suddenly there are so much negative reviews and news in the media all around us, that we feel that this world is a really hopeless place. There is no sign of positivity, or that we always feel that nobody is thinking about justice, nobody is thinking about what is right and wrong, everybody trying to live their own selfish life, and then all are like that. And we also they slowly mold ourselves like them, and then we forget that once we want to be good, we want to do right, we want to be honest, and we want to be compassionate, we want to help others. These were all our dreams in our childhood. So I think you should not lose hope. You always will get people like you around you. You just have to open your eyes, see them, search for them, have such more platforms like this. Meet friends, make friends, be compassionate, and don't let that child inside you die. Just keep that innocent child alive inside you, and I think it will make all the things work. Uh, so I really thank the people who started this initiative, and then I really wish them best luck. And I want to extend my support in any way they want to uh, uh, take it, and then hope such platforms increase more and more.
Thank you, Priyadarsh. I mean, that generous support that you are offering without even people asking you is really showing the character that you possess. We are really thankful to you for that wonderful message. In the conclusion that you spoke, keep the child within you always awakened, and that will make things happen. It will be the inner happiness that we will attain. With that thought, I think we will conclude today's Doctors with a Difference. We will meet you next week once again on the same platform, and with another doctor who has been doing something differently. We are conducting these sessions by cooperation with the Prayas Sevankur and the Own Your Growth platform that is created by the students, medical students, for their own growth. And this is a part of the entire journey that they share, and Kalya Health together. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.